Hello children, today we are here to discuss the second chapter of our book Flamingo for class 12, Lost Spring, Stories of Stolen Childhood by Anise Jung. Now Anise Jung is an Indian author, a journalist and a columnist. She was born in the year 1944 and she had her initial years of education in Hyderabad, and later on she moved on to the University of Michigan in US to pursue her post-graduation. She has authored many novels, and her novels focus about women, the state of affairs about poor people, and she presents various problems of people. But what is peculiar about her is that she presents the problems, but she never offers a solution in her novels. And it is for us, it is for the readers to arrive at the solutions. Same as the state of affairs in this story, Lost Spring, wherein she talks about abject poverty to which some people, some children are, they have to suffer a life of abject poverty, and they have to suffer exploitation, and they're deprived of basic amenities of life, and they have to slog on their lives from morning till night, scrounging from the garbage and doing things like that. So this particular chapter, it is divided into two sections. One section is titled Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage, and the second part is I Want to Drive a Car. So let us talk about the first part first. The first part deals with one particular child and the similar children like him who stay in Simapuri, which is on the periphery of Delhi. Yet the author says it is metaphorically miles away from it. And how is it metaphorically miles away from Delhi? Because the people of Delhi, they are enjoying they enjoy a luxurious life, a life of comfort, while these little children and their families who are staying in Simapuri, they are deprived of even the basic amenities of life. They are living in shanties, they are living in houses made of mud, and they don't have even proper water supply. They have lack of drainage system. They are living in ill ventilated houses like shanties, and they don't get proper 2 square meals a day even. And there's one particular child which the author comes across, and he's this little innocent 10-year-old boy, and his name is Sahib. And when the author sees him, what is he doing? He's scrounging from the garbage, and he's trying to find out something from the garbage dumps, and she very out of curiosity, she asks him, why does he do that? And he says very innocently, he replies, I don't have anything else to do. And without having a forethought, the author asks him, why does he not go to school? And quite innocently the child says, I don't have, because there's no school nearby in my neighborhood. And the author says, what if I build a school? Would you go then? And because the author wants to inquire, and she's enthusiastic, she's curious to know whether the child would join school if he's given a chance to. And she sees a sparkle of in his eyes, there's a gleam, he feels very happy, and he says, why not? I would definitely join school. And then after a few days, when the child meets the author and he inquires, is the school ready? The author feels very guilty, she feels very embarrassed because she had made a promise which she had not meant to keep. But then she goes on to wonder, and she goes on to think that promises like these, they abound in the lives of these poor people, these poor children. Promises which are made, but promises which are never meant to be kept. So Sahib is one such child who keeps on, and he has a lot of other children too. There are actually 10,000 people who are living in the periphery of Delhi in Simapuri, and all these people, they have migrated from Dhaka, Bangladesh, because their houses, they were swept away because of storm, and also because of the Indo-Pak war that happened in the year 1971. So they had migrated from there, and now they settled like nomads. Wherever they find some job, some menial odd jobs, they pitch their tents, or they make such shanties, and they live there. And they feel that and for them, Dhaka, and for these little children, it is just a distant memory. Why? Because these people feel that food for them is much more important than an identity. Because here in Simapuri, even if they don't have an identity, at least they feel that if they get 2 square meals a day, and if they don't have to sleep on an empty stomach, then they are much more happier than to live their lives in the fields which gave them nothing. So Sahib is once a child, and for these little children, garbage for them is gold. And how is it a gold? It is kind of a treasure hunt. They keep on looking for something. Sometimes they find a 10 rupee note, and this gives them an incentive, a kind of a force to look out for more. And for the adults, it is a means of survival for them. It is their bread and butter. It is a roof over their head, even though it is a leaking roof. It is everything for them. And the Sahib, he is happy to do this job of rat picking, and there's a smile on his face. He feels that he's his own master. He keeps on roaming here and there with a plastic bag on his shoulders, with his friends roaming here and there around the city to look out for things from and find out things from the garbage. And after a few days, and then these little children, they don't even have slippers. It is a very tragic thing that they don't have the slippers to wear. And when the author again asks these children, why don't they wear slippers, so they say that they come up with n number of excuses, and they say that the mother did not take them off from the shelf, or they say that it is a tradition to remain barefoot. And the author wonders whether it is a tradition or it is because of the poverty, it is because of lack of money, because these people cannot afford to buy chappals, these people cannot afford to buy slippers. So she keeps on wondering, and she goes on. And a few days later, this chapter basically focuses on two different worlds. Just like every coin has two different sides, and similarly we have two different worlds, the worlds of haves and the world of have-nots. So these have-nots, who are deprived of basic amenities of life, who don't even get proper meals, who don't even get proper water supply, no drainage system, no proper ventilation in their homes. They keep on slogging on their lives from day till endless night, just like that. And a few days later, when the author again meets Sahib, she sees that Sahib is now working, and he says that now he's working at a tea stall. And but then he's lost his carefree look, he's lost his own freedom, because he works now for the owner of the tea stall. And this is very important line, students, wherein the author says the steel canister that he's carrying now is much more heavier than the plastic bag which he used to carry earlier. Why? Because the steel canister belonged to the owner of the tea stall, and the plastic bag was his own. So that means he was his own master. Now he has lost his carefree look, now he has lost his freedom. So students, this is one part of the chapter. Let us now move on to the second part of the chapter, and the title of that part is I Want to Drive a Car. Now this chapter deals with the city of Bangals, the city of Firozabad, which is famous, which is the bangle making industry of India, and glass bangles which they make. And herein we talk about one particular child, and the name of the child is Mukesh, and he is very different from the rest of the children who are living in Firozabad. Why is he different? Because he dreams of becoming a car mechanic, a motor mechanic, unlike the other people, unlike the other children of his town, who have just accepted this God-giving lineage. They feel that it is a God-giving lineage and they cannot break that. And what is that? The art of making bangles. They have lived, their ancestors have taught them how to make bangles, and they don't know anything else apart from making bangles. So Mukesh wants to take the author home, and when the author accompanies him, she feels that the lanes are choked with garbage. And when she reaches his house, it is the same state of affairs, similar conditions, wobbly doors, with rooms without windows, and then the walls are such as if they would just crumple down any time. And this is the state of affairs in which Mukesh and many other families are living in Firozabad. And when the author asks, and there is Mukesh's grandmother, there is Mukesh's my sister-in-law who's working, who's a young bahu of the family, who's just even though she's not engaged in the business of making bangles, but she is busy in serving the entire family, and she has to look after her husband, she has to look after Mukesh, and she has to look after her in-laws, and she's busy, and she's a young lady who's busy in that. And Mukesh's grandmother also feels that this is a God-giving lineage and they cannot break that. Her husband who had gone blind because of bangle making, because of the dust that comes out when you polish the bangles, he's gone. And there are many others like Mukesh's grandfather who have gone blind because of this bangle making thing. As these children, these people, their eyes are now more adjusted to the dark than to the light outside, and it is because of this reason, because they work in dingy cells and they work in such conditions that even before they attain adulthood, they lose their eyesight, or they become blind. So this is the sad state of affairs. And the author asks them, why don't they organize themselves into a cooperative? They cannot dare to think anything different from making bangles, and they feel that they're torn, they're caught, they're trapped in between two worlds. One is the world of the abject poverty, and the other is the world of that vicious circle, the nexus of middlemen, of sahukars, of politicians, of bureaucrats, of policemen, who don't let them do anything else apart from making bangles. And there is lack of awareness, there is lack of education, there is lack of leadership among them, which forces them to just slog in day in and day out in this art of making bangles. And Mukesh is one child who is dreaming differently, so there is a ray of hope in him, there is sparkle in his eyes, because he feels that even though he would have to walk a long distance, he would fulfill his dream, and he would become a motor mechanic one day. So Mukesh is one such child, and we don't know whether his dream would be fulfilled or not. He needs a lot of determination, and it is actually, the author leaves it as an open question for us. It is for the haves, for the rich people, for the politicians who needs to work in for these poor little children, for the have-nots who need to uplift them, and they should be exposed to the world of education. They should be provided education. It is the right of each and every child up to the age of 14. This is a law, that they have to attain education, and it has to be given free of cost to them. But as we know, the sad state of affairs in India, laws are made but they are hardly implemented. So that is why child labor is there, and just like there's so many little children, around 20,000 little children who are working in glass blowing industries or making bangles, and they don't even know that it is illegal to work there, but they are doing so because there is no one to make them aware. And there is, even though they try to think differently, sometimes if they do so, they are the people, the so-called rich people, the haves, they don't let them do that. So these two stories talk about two different children. One is Sahib and another is Mukesh, and they come from two different parts. One is from Simapuri and the other one is from Firozabad. Even though they belong to two different cultures, two different places, two different towns, but still the basic theme is the same. And the theme that we're talking about in this chapter is abject poverty to which these children are subjected to, and also the world of exploitation that they have to go through in order to make both ends meet. So these are the two important themes of this chapter, Lost Spring. And as we know, these children, how spring, the spring of their lives has been snatched away from them. The world of the childhood, how childhood spring, which has been compared to childhood, how childhood has been snatched away from them. And we know it very clearly that spring is the season of joy, spring is the season of beauty, of flowers blooming all around us. And the author has compared spring with the childhood. Childhood is like the spring of our lives, and how these little children, how their spring, how their childhood has been snatched away from them, how they have to live in poverty, and how they're trapped in these conditions, and they cannot escape, they cannot come out of this exploitation. And this is about this chapter, students. I hope you like this video. Thank you. We'll meet soon with another video on the next chapter of our book.